Hi there, Steve Addison for the Movements Podcast. Podcast for people who want to multiply disciples and churches everywhere. Today we're in Mysore, India, talking to Colin and Carolyn Craggs about pioneering movements.
We, as a young married couple, were in a church, and a missions pastor was talking about who feels called to overseas work, and we were at opposite sides of the church that day, and somehow found ourselves both at the front of the church saying, me, I want to do overseas work. And from there, God took us on a process of listening to him as to where and when and what place, and he, again, independently gave us the name of a city in South India, and that's where we ended up.
Well, I'm glad he gave you both the same city. It would have been terrible if they were different cities.
Yeah, and we went on a steep learning curve after that, because neither of us had been exposed to disciple-making movements, and right from the ground, and no one in that city was doing that kind of work as well. So,
before we get to that, tell us a bit about the transition for you as a family, because you had 3 young children and one on the way.
Yeah, correct.
What was that like?
Yes, it was very, very interesting in those early days, because we heard daily comments and had daily tears about, I hate India, I want to go back to Australia, from the older two, and our priority was split between, we need to look at our spiritual climate here versus we need to find an obstetrician and get this baby born safely. So, a lot of juggling in those early days.
And I think the kids had real struggles with the food because it's hot and spicy. What was that like?
That was actually, it seems like a small thing, but we would be struggling to find something they could eat. They would be, this is too spicy, that is too spicy. So we actually prayed, Lord, change their taste buds so that they can handle spicy food. And now they actually have competitions as to who can eat the most chili on their meal. So yes, a big transformation.
So they just burnt out those taste buds.
They might have done.
Now they'll eat anything. Excellent. And so some challenges as a family, adjusting to culture, finding schools, all of that sort of stuff. And you had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and so they're old enough to really feel it. So what was that like for you as parents?
As parents, one of the challenges is trying to work out is the issue before us, the 6-year-old, 4-year-old, or 1-year-old. Is it because they're 6 and 4, or is it because it's a different culture, or
that's their personality.
That's their personality, and trying to allow for the cultural stuff, but not allow for the little kid naughty stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge, because it's sometimes we got it right, many times we got it wrong.
Yeah. And as a family, it was also a different time management system. We were used to, okay, let's start this day at 8:30 and nowhere's open until 10:30.
Yeah.
So, and bank business takes all day, and you need multiple copies of documents to sign a rental agreement. So, a lot of those frustrations early on.
And you're also on the learning curve in terms of you're learning about multiplying movements and trying to apply the principles and some of the tools in the early days. What was that like?
Plenty of mistakes, lots and lots of mistakes along the way.
Give us an example.
Sure. An example would be, reading about Yinkai's 6-lesson plan and how successful that was in China. And from what we understood, Karnataka had a fairly high literacy, so we thought that would be a good place to begin. And the very first group we go to, no one can read or write. And then we discover that Bangalore has a high literacy, and outside of Bangalore it rapidly declines, and then you get into the villages and it's declined even further. And so that strategy was out. We had to look at doing something that didn't require reading and writing.
So what did you do?
It's a very oral culture. Storytelling is part of their natural family life. And so stories worked really well. So we used the Discovery Bible Study model, and the leader of that group used to tell the story, and then questions would get asked to make sure that people had understood. And then the people themselves that were participants in the group retelling that story to each other to make sure that they had not only understood the story, but also were able to then pass it on to others.
Okay, and how did that work?
It was a little different. The reproducing the story was no problem because the education system here was very much rote learning. So people got that part. The questions actually were more of a challenge because they weren't used to voicing their opinions at all.
Yeah.
So we had to really encourage people. It's okay. There's no wrong answer here. What are you feeling? Just voice it out.
Yeah.
So that part was a challenge.
So ironically, one of the key Bible study questions was, what do you like about the passage? Because everyone has an opinion, nobody can be wrong, you can't say anything wrong, but that would get people talking.
Well, now what was the strategy? I think initially you started by training believers, training churches, and mobilizing
the reason
them.
we began with that approach. There were 2 states in India under BJP rule.
BJP is the Hindu Nationalist Party that rules India, but also rules some of the states of India. Mm-hmm.
But at the time, it was only 2 states. One being Orissa, where the Australian missionary was killed, and the other one was where we were working. And 10 years before we came on, there was a lot of freedom. You could stand on the street corner, have a speaker, preach the gospel. It was fine. But after the BJP came, there was a lot of persecution, people beaten up, churches burnt.
Yeah, accusations of forced conversion and prosecutions.
Yep.
Yeah.
So about 10% of the pastors were physically beaten.
Okay.
Which is pretty high. And so the idea of going and speaking to a non-believer who you don't know, knocking on doors, people didn't want to do that. It was a very fearful thing. We were told you can't do that, you'll be arrested. So we thought, well, let's work through the existing believers. They know people, they know lots of non-Christians. It's safe because it's a known person. And so that's where we began.
But we quickly ran into troubles because people were very happy, particularly pastors, to receive free training. But when it came to releasing leaders, it just wasn't happening.
Okay, so they'd accept the training, but wanted to stay in control.
Correct. For a while there, we thought the issue was they didn't have the skills to equip and empower a new leader. And after a while, we realized that a lot of these churches belonged to their fathers. So these were second generation in the family line churches, which means their father knew how to raise up a leader because they did it with their son. And as long as the church stayed in the family, that was okay. But to have other people leaders, that wasn't going to happen.
Or for someone that had not been theologically trained to even run a Bible study group, they were not willing for that.
So most of the churches we came across, even if they had small groups or cottage meetings, it was all run by the pastor.
That's a busy pastor then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so very high control churches.
Okay. So what did you do in response to that?
We sat down together and we prayed, and Colin said, you know what we need to do? We need to filter. And we filtered like crazy. We were like, okay, this person has received a week or 2 of training. What have they done with it? And if they hadn't done anything with it, we would go, okay, let's wrap up our involvement and move on. And that way, eventually, we did find some people that were willing to release leaders. Colin found actually a pastor that was ready and already doing that. So that was really encouraging. But yes, after many years of frustration.
So go on, Colin.
But we applied Jesus' strategy of enter the village, find a person of peace. If you don't find them, move on. We applied that to Christians. If we found someone who was already trying to empower lay people, was already giving the ministry away, we would partner with them. If we saw people holding on and doing control, we'd give them a little bit of training, give them the opportunity. If they didn't move forward, we moved on, dusted our feet, and just trusted that God would lead us, bless them, and hope that God would. We actually moved more to a God, you've got to bring the right people, or this doesn't happen. Yeah. Even with our evangelism, we stopped. In some ways, we stopped looking at the results and just said, God, you're either working in this area or you're not, and please give us the opportunity.
So it took some years of frustration, where I guess you were getting experience as trainers and you were trying this thing on, but there came a point at which we've had enough. It's not proving fruitful.
Yes.
And so you started making, I imagine at first, some hard decisions about who you'd follow up, who you'd prioritize in terms of time.
Yep, correct.
Yeah, very much so. And we found we also had to go back to the basics and get out and run groups ourselves to go, okay, we need to model this in order for people to get it. We need to show some success in this so we can say it works. So we, again, went back to, okay, who can we, present the gospel to? Can we start new groups? So, that kind of thing.
Okay, so there's two shifts going on. When you hit that, I guess it was a big wall. We're doing the stuff, but it's not working. So instead of blaming the principles, you made these two shifts. So, and one of them was, well, we need to be closer to the action, not just the outsiders training, but we live in this neighborhood or this city. So you got more involved in the harvest yourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And being able to understand then some of the finer details of what was working and not working, and through actually some input from you guys, Steve and your wife Michelle,
I'm sure it was Michelle.
Yeah, exactly. We were able to also recognise, okay, we've got a lot of people willing to accept Jesus, but so few are actually interested in baptism. And why is that? And being able to problem solve some of the issues like that really helped us.
Okay. So any other major shifts that occurred along the way in terms of learning how to apply the principles in a real setting?
One of the, a few years ago, we had some good results. We were happy with it. Things were happening. But I think it's that constant listening to other practitioners, finding out what they're trying, and that continual learning process. So one of the breakthroughs was listening to people doing, these evangelistic pushes into neighborhoods, knocking on doors and saying, can we bless you? And for me, for years being told, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. And continually coming back to Scripture and saying, how close are we doing what Jesus did? And what would that look like for us in our context? So in the beginning, we were working through Christians, and that was good. One of the lessons we learned was about persecution, because that's a safe way to do it, that it was the fear of persecution that stopped a lot of people. And at the back of my head was that question of, can a push work here? And is it just the fear of what could happen holding us back? And we decided to bite the bullet and try a push.
Okay.
And see what happened.
And we had several local partners very willing to join us on that learning curve.
And what, just describe for us what a push is.
Sure. We would go out in twos, and because our theory was, if we go and bless and pray for people as an initial step, Jesus said, heal the sick, cast out demons, proclaim the gospel. So we decided, let's just separate those two out and just go out to begin with and bless. and then follow up with the open doors. And so what we trained people to do is knock on doors and say this: I'm praying for God's blessing in this area. If God could do a miracle in your life, what would it be?
Okay.
And we took half an hour to train people, get them to practice, and then we'd send them out. So the first training would be an hour and a half an hour, this is what you say, and then out the door. And that's what people were doing. And we would just hope that if we prayed for someone and the door was receptive and we felt in our spirit that this was a safe house, we'd go back. Okay. If we didn't feel it was safe, or they didn't want prayer, or we just didn't feel right, we didn't go back.
And that follow-up would happen a week later, and we'd say to the person we prayed for, if you're willing, can we take your number and give you a call next week, or drop in next week and see what the results of this prayer were?
Okay.
And then we just trusted God to move in that person's life and find the right people. And
what happened?
Well, let me give a quick illustration. We had one African pastor in the city we were working in, and on the other side of town, we're doing the push. He knows there's African students there, and he wants to start a new church. And my prayer was, God, let him find one African. He doesn't even have to be interested in Jesus. Just let him find one African.
In his hour of door knocking, let him find just one student. Yeah.
So the first door he knocks on, the guy opens the door. It's an African student. He says, I'm asking God for which church to attend, and I have 7 of my friends in this house that need the gospel. Can you come in and share with them?
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's needle in the haystack stuff. We could not have planned it. And we sent out 9 teams in 9 different areas that day, and none of the others found Africans. So this African pastor just found the needle.
Okay.
And you just go, that's God. That's God.
It has to be, yeah.
Yeah.
And what about amongst Indian folk? Were there any examples there?
Yes, we had another push that 3 pairs went out into 3 different sections of a neighbourhood that is, it has a high Muslim population, but also, a high Hindu population. And some, had the opportunity to pray and some didn't. But out of one of that pair of twos area, 2 groups were started because people were ready, and they said, yes, this is what I need prayer for. The follow-up happened by the original people that went and knocked on the door, and they said, yep, we're really happy because, one of them had asked for prayer for family harmony, and it had miraculously happened. And so those people passed on to another team of people and said, we ourselves personally can't follow up and start a group in this house, but are you willing to do that? And so another couple of people went in and started a group, and out of that, another group has started in the across the road house. And another example of God working is we were speaking the local language, but actually this area was a little ghetto of people from another state, and recently an old grandmother has gotten involved in going to that area, and she is a native speaker of the same language they indigenously speak. So God is always refining and blessing people who are willing.
Yeah. We were getting good results working through believers and their friends and family, but doing the pushes, I would say we saw 10 times the results, because when we got entry into the home, we would ask the question, where do you want to meet? They would pick a place that they felt comfortable with. When do you want to meet? And then who else could you invite? And right from the beginning, we laid that foundation of you can invite people into your safe place. They didn't always the first week, but we saw one person invite their other family members, 2, and within 6 weeks there was 10 people, because as they saw the love of Christ, they just invited more and more people. So we would see whole groups of new believers, and only in one push did we not see a group of seekers begin. And that church really didn't want to start new groups.
They just wanted to bring them back into their church.
They did, and the pastor had his staff working, and when we said to the staff, okay, the goal here is to get groups, they're like, oh, we're too busy for that.
We can't run any more groups.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, surprise, surprise, they didn't find any new groups started.
Yeah.
But otherwise, every time we went out, we would see a new group start.
So we just sort of go back over some of the breakthroughs. Early on, it's about, finding the tools that are most effective in that setting. It's about connecting broadly, but filtering, looking for the person of peace amongst the believers who's keen to do this and mobilize others.
Yes.
You guys needed to really get into the field so as you could become more effective in training others and could talk out of your experience.
Yes.
And then you brought all of those pieces together and said, we're going to break the fear barrier, but still in a sensible way, we're going to go out into the community and not be bound by the fear of persecution.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Well, these are some life lessons. And it sounds like it took a number of years. Some of these didn't come for quite some time. Is that right?
Exactly. I'd say in the last 18 months is when we saw the most fruitful ministry in India.
Okay. Anything else you really needed to learn before that door of fruitfulness opened?
Well, I would say for me, but probably I can also speak for Colin, is the power of prayer. We were used to praying those prayers, God, if it's your will, do this. And we realised our authority is what Colin said, to go and proclaim the good news and the year of the Lord's favour. And when we started doing that, we personally changed and became more bold. But also we saw people's lives change. And even if their immediate circumstances didn't transform, something would happen in them. And they would say, now I'm able to face my situation with strength. But then miracles also did happen. So people that were childless started having babies, and, here and there, small healings would happen, or someone's financial situation would change. And we ourselves were encouraged by those answers to prayer.
For me, one of the keys would be being surrounded by, or not surrounded, but having a community of other practitioners. So we would meet annually with other practitioners and being open to learning from them and not being ashamed of what results we were getting or weren't getting, because a lot of their insights were our blind spots. One case in particular, I asked a successful practitioner out of China, I said to him, is the big movement similar to the big mega churches? It sounds good on paper, but you really need to be a special kind of person to make it happen. And he looked at me and he says, I don't know the answer to that. He said, what I do know is that this is God's strategy, and if you are faithful to it, you will see fruit. Whether it's a big movement or a handful of churches, that's God's problem.
Yeah.
And being able to do the work faithfully and trusting God with results, for me, was very liberating to let go of. It's not about me. This is God's work. It's His plan, and let go of the big results. Just let Him do it.
Yeah,
and tying your identity to the results.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. Instead, just keep your focus on how great God is and faithfulness to Him and His ways.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being obedient to the systems He put in place. Systems of evangelism, systems of pastoral care, systems of leadership development.
Yeah.
So what you're building is healthy and able to reproduce, not just going for the quick result.
Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah.
And recognizing, when Jesus says the harvest is plentiful, the laborers are few, recognizing in what Jesus talks about is what's the most important thing. And he doesn't pray for money. He doesn't pray for buildings. He doesn't even pray for more laborers, which is when I asked a lot of people, what does Jesus pray for? They say more laborers, but he doesn't even pray for that. He prays that the laborers would be sent, that they would go. And recognizing in our ministry and in everyone else, the hardest thing is walking out that door into a village. And same guy actually told me, going is the hardest part. The work of the ministry is easy. Until we went, the ministry seemed like the tough part. Yeah. But I've come to realize the going, actually, that's the tough. The ministry itself actually is pretty easy.
If you just get started.
You just get started.
Step outside the door.
The rest of it, so even, like I said, that big breakthrough with that African pastor, they started a new church after that and invited me to the church opening, and I discovered they just went across town and did it a second time. Wow. And he's like, Colin, this is easy. I'm like, yeah, it is.
So after these 5.5 years of really learning some key foundational things, what does the last 18 months look like?
For us, it is nothing short of miraculous, because there were partners that appeared. Sometimes it seemed out of nowhere. I don't even know how you met Pastor Vijay, but like people that would say, oh, why don't you come and do some training at my church? Or one situation where they'd been out on a push, kind of, not before we were doing pushes, but had been praying and stuff in a particular area, and came across a practitioner and said, well, which church are you from? And she told them, and Colin connected with the pastor of her church, and out of that, one particular guy that was trained has started how many groups?
He went from 3 to 39 church plants
within 3 months or something.
It was 9 months.
9 months. Okay.
Yeah.
And the other pastor, Colin trained about 12 to 15 of his people, and they went into another town and instructed a pastor there on how to do pushes, and he went from an empty church to a full church. And as we were leaving India, they were planning to do the same in another part of the state, and them encouraging each other and all those good kind of things. Another, you want to talk about holiness, Lucas?
Yep. We saw, I think what we saw were people who got the paradigm, implemented the paradigm, owned the paradigm, and we're now out training other people as well. And so we didn't have to be there anymore. Where we're working, it feels like a drop in the ocean. Yeah. But those drops add up. I was at one training session, and this pastor we partnered with and had done very successful just happened to be there at the same time. And when this group of 40 pastors said to me, is this really possible? I said, well, let me call up this guy I've been working with. And that was great. So the good thing
they
there
could
was
hear one of their
listening
own
to him
talking about what God had done. It wasn't just the Westerner.
That's right. Yeah, it was local guys, and we really restricted ourselves to the state. We felt we weren't to train outside of the state. And the stories we're hearing from our partners is they're now being invited to other places. And one of them in particular, as other pastors say to him, oh, the ministry's tough here, there's a lot of persecution, he just laughs and says, no, it's not. The work is easy.
And he shares the strategies with them.
Yeah.
He's more full in his ministry life than he can handle. He's not after more groups, so he's happy to pass on the strategies.
Yeah.
So you've learned some key lessons. You've seen God come through. You're now beginning to see a multiplying movement begin to bubble away.
Yeah.
But God's called you back to Australia. There's some educational needs for your kids. What happens with this this work in India? Where's it going now?
But actually, that's a good question. we didn't actually come back for our kids' education. We
Okay.
felt called back to Australia, and one of our questions is, God, why are you bringing us back when we're kind of really enjoying the fruit of what's happening in India? We've got 3 different streams to 4th generation. We're really happy. We feel like that's coming back a bit prematurely, but we felt similar to going there and going on the mission field that independently we felt, yes, God's calling us back to this particular suburb in Australia to continue the ministry. So our plan is to establish hopefully the same thing here, but also to continue to go back 3-4 times a year as much as we can to offer some more mid-level training and to work with those who are partnering to help them to expand their influence in the ministry. So we very much from behind the scenes.
Okay, so your role will change really to be, previously you've been on the ground side by side with the people you're training.
Yeah.
Now they're stepping up and you have
Yeah.
3 streams of 4th generation churches.
Yeah.
And now you're going to play a role more of coming in a few times a year to bring those people together and equip and resource them.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, if you've enjoyed today's podcast, you might like to recommend it to others through social media. It really helps. I'm Steve Addison for the Movements Podcast. Thanks for listening.